everybody. Welcome back to the Bosshole Chronicles. We are glad to have you again today. We have a subject matter expert episode featuring an author and we'll call him a retired senior advisor at McKinsey. His name's Bill Schaninger. And the book, one you must have for your library, Power to the Middle: Why Managers Hold the Keys to the Future of Work. So this is a power-packed session. Really great advice for senior leaders wondering how to maximize and optimize their middle managers. Let me tell you quickly about Bill. As I mentioned, he just retired recently from McKinsey. He was there for 20 plus years. He's an international speaker, author, researcher, and he has long time been an advisor to senior executives. He's got an MBA, a doctorate. Bill has spent decades as a consultant and researcher, but he specializes in business performance, culture, values, talent. And I think you're going to pick up on that in our conversation. He speaks in real words. I think you'll find this episode pretty riveting. And we even touch upon the return to work and his thoughts there. So let's jump in.
The Bosshole Chronicles are brought to you by Real Good Ventures, a talent optimization firm helping organizations diagnose their most critical people and execution issues with world-class analytics. Make sure to check out all the resources in the show notes and be sure to follow us and share your feedback. Enjoy today's episode.
Bill, it is so great to have you on our podcast. Thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Well, thank you for inviting me, guys. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and of course, we, like many other interested parties, want to talk with you firsthand about your great work. Power to the Middle: Why Managers Hold the Keys to the Future of Work, drawing upon your decades of experience at McKinsey, all the things you've done. This book is really different. And maybe in some ways it's similar to the messages out there, but you have something really critical to talk about when it comes to what we should be focusing on with managers. And so I'm just going to toss it over to you. Tell us why the answer is the problem.
Well, thank you for having me and noticing our work. I mean, I'm a co-author with my former colleagues, Brian Hancock and Emily Field. We worked on this for quite a while. Yeah. I like to say that the answer is the problem is when we started writing this, and I kind of knew that I was going to be leaving McKinsey within probably a 2.5 year window. Mm-hmm. And I was in our global knowledge leader role for the organization practice, and I was rolling out of that, and I started doing the future of work stuff. And we conveniently, because we're it's professional services and McKinsey, you structure it out and you go, hey, here's what's changing about the work and how the work gets done. And well, I don't know. It seems like the boss would know that, and well, what do they know and what have they learned, right? And well, what doesn't really matter anymore that they used to know? Well, the person they work for should probably know that. And hey, what are we doing about where we come to do the work at? We're dealing with this hybrid thing. Are we going to force people back? Are we going to entice them back?
Yeah.
Are we just going to let them work wherever? Well, who should probably coordinate that, right? Because the coordination should probably line up with the collaboration. Who's going to do that? Well, the person they work for should probably do that. And so when we were doing that, it kept on coming up with all these obvious, immediate answers of the middle manager, the people leader, was just the answer to all these questions. Well, what are we going to do about? But the minute you said that, you're like, yeah, but they're actually not very good at interacting with people. And many of them are still doing their own work and getting buried by it. And actually many of them, and each of us, Brian and I and Emily, we each had these stories where the role as crafted had so much administrivia and bureaucracy attached to it. They didn't have a fighting chance to actually be a leader.
Right.
It was feed the beast kind of stuff. And so that got us around to thinking, hey, there might be a there here. This isn't an article. It actually is probably a book. Mm-hmm. And then once we made that choice, I had really wanted to do a 2-part book where we're right at 25 years since War for Talent was written. And I thought it might be nice to say, well, what have we learned in the 25 years? And sort of, and honestly, just because I'm, a failed academic, right? Dr. Schaninger hasn't really gotten to be used. I just want to say, hey, there was some stuff that was really good science. Cleveland and Murphy on appraisal is still amazing and good science. Tim Judge adding on to that, really amazing good science. Junior Field and Gatewood, still the absolute Bible on selection. So there was really good research that came out. Schmidt and Hunter coming out, Mick Mount and Murray Barrick coming out on the Big Five. All this great stuff came out right in the early 90s that said we can quantify all this amazing stuff around talent and org psych. But right at the same time, we had re-engineering, restructuring, offshoring, E-HR, the run-up for the dot-com bubble, then the crash, crazy fixation on options, until accounting rules changed. We had this long run, is this going to be lean? Is this going to be six? Is it going to be lean six? The era of fads, like basically punctuated in 3 10-year periods, 90 to 2000, 2000 to the crisis to COVID. It just felt to me like we were at a situation that wasn't just of the moment, but of the derivative, of what had been going on over the previous 3 decades, where we took people who probably when they started, I'm 54, just turned 54. I would have started work in the early 90s. My parents would have believed that it was cradle to grave employment.
Right.
Mm.
And in my lifetime, here I'm in Eastern Pennsylvania, in the Lehigh Valley, Bethlehem Steel went cold. Lucent went away. Mack Trucks went to South Carolina, right? Fuller Company was sold. I mean, like you had the up and down of AT&T, the up and down of IBM, up and down of the auto industry writ large. That to me just felt like the Gen Xers in particular almost had the contract changed overnight, where it wasn't enough to be like an esteemed vice president for PPL or esteemed vice president for Air Products. It was like, well, you're under threat always. And so I really wanted to look at that front end bit of how did we make this mess? Now, okay, the HBR and McKinsey both said, Bill, that's a wonderful idea. We're not doing that. That could be a chapter on how did we get here. But the genesis was, what the heck happened? That we found ourselves at the moment when we need this cadre the most. Boy, they're really unprepared. And then, so that was the essence, right? Which was the answer is the problem. And then the second part is, and by the way, we made this problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
We did. Point 2, we made this problem. We who slavishly followed 6x6 and ring the working capital like we have the financial capital. We've made this issue, cutting T&L budgets, not investing in cohorts, not investing in real coaching and feedback during performance appraisal, making it about the form.
Right.
So, when you look around now and go like, oh, well, who needs middle managers? They're not very good. Well, one, we all need them. Everyone does. Everyone wants to believe that the work they're doing makes sense and ties to something important. Well, you need someone to help you figure that out. You need someone, could you imagine, do you have kids who've played like soccer? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Remember 6-year-old soccer, right? It's horrific. It's like bees to honey, a little kid running.
Cluster ball is what we called it. That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what an organization would be like if you didn't actually have something resembling decent leadership. No, we're going to spread it out. You each have a role to play. You're going to do this. You're going to stay in the goal and be the goalie. You're going to go over here. I mean, could you imagine paying for like piano lessons or dance lessons and discovering that the instructor never talks to your kid? Well, I mean, we've created context where all the manager has time to do is go to the most problematic employee and feed the beast.
Right.
Because of what we set them up for. So that was the essence of this, was like, look at what we've created. And then it was to try to say, okay, well, it's enough to, admire the problem, but what do you do about it?
Right.
So that was the point. It seems to be resonating pretty well. I do think it's straddled the line a little bit between people in these roles feeling heard and seen.
Yes.
Right. Which I think was really I thought it was important to acknowledge that for many of these folks, they don't get out of bed in the morning and say, gee, I'm going to be a little worse today. Right.
Yeah.
It's a difficult situation. Right. And they're just trying to struggle through it. But also for the executives and the HR organizations to say, this also doesn't have to be fait accompli. We can do something about it.
Okay. So sticking with that, Bill, and I don't think it's unusual. Well, I don't think it's, what's the word I'm looking for? Not unusual, but it shouldn't surprise us that Gallup's recent research that says disengagement is at a 9-year high. So when you talk about our decade, sort of that window of those decades, how is it that we should be so shocked that, 50% of the American workforce is disengaged, 17% is actively disengaged, and that catalyst, that middle manager, it plays such a critical role. And yet it's like, wow, how can people be so disengaged? It's like, oh my gosh, we have brought this on ourselves. But our question to you is, how long before we really substantively do something about it? You've figured it out. You've seen it and your co-authors, but what is it going to take, for crying out loud, other than our podcast?
Yeah. Well, let's hope this helps.
Yeah.
A good shout out to Jim Harder and the guys at Gallup, who are excellent.
Yep.
I mean, Jim Harder's really, really, really good. There's an interesting thing there under the engaged metric. It's the what percent of leaders who are engaged have disengaged teams, and then what the derivative is. You know what I mean? At what point do you find the breakdown?
Yep. That's
a huge issue, I think, because particularly when you start looking at the volume of turnover for many organizations, it's some saying, oh, well, it's not really the attrition, it's the reshuffle. No, it is attrition.
Mm-hmm.
You're leaving one place and going to another, because as soon as that person walks out the door, the social capital is gone.
Right.
The person coming in doesn't know the language, doesn't know the norms, doesn't know the code speak. You used to laugh and say the best salve for a bad operating model is a great culture. But cultures go away when the people go away.
That's exactly right.
That's right.
Right. So, I mean, I think it really is. It feels tenuous because it is.
Mm-hmm.
I think the great attrition, great attraction stuff, which my colleague Aaron DeSmet and I, and a bunch of other colleagues, worked on over the last 3-4 years. The earliest part of that data was just so alarming in that the employees who were leaving were saying, yes, I've left. Yes, I'm actively considering leaving. And yes, I'll walk without another job. That was remarkable.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, at one point, the spread between open slots and the people who could fill them was like right around 9 or just under 9 million or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the right ballpark. It was the same number of jobs that were lost in the financial crisis.
Mm.
So you would have had to take all those out just to get us back to parity.
Right.
When you start thinking about that, you're like, oof. And then you start looking at what they're saying. I want to work for a company that I can be proud of. I want to be respected as a person. I want the work I individually do to matter. I want to know that there's growth and development. And yes, I want to be paid fairly, but that was never the top number. It was just table stakes.
Right.
So when that first started happening, you saw this run of commentary by executives broadly pointing their finger outside. My competitors are being irresponsible. They're just chasing the buck. But when you looked at what the employees who were actually leaving were saying, it's like, no, man, turn the finger around.
Right.
They're running away from you.
It's you. Yeah.
Right. You and the cadre that you have installed. I mean, and so this is the part, the part 2 about we've made it this way.
Right.
Every leader you choose to hire and everyone you choose to allow to continue being a leader is on you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. And they become the gift that keeps on giving, particularly when they're bad.
Right.
That's right.
So the answer is the problem. The problem is of our own making. What's the third point?
Well, I mean, look, the good news is you can do something about it, right? It requires a couple difficult steps. Notably, you have to be willing to look at incumbents and call it straight.
Mm-hmm.
Broad cuts. Probably a third are pretty good and could just be better with actually. You were lucky enough to get people who were inclined to be okay.
Yeah.
A third are probably never going to be all world, but they can be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But a third are probably never going to be up to it and are probably doing damage every day.
Yep.
Now, amongst that group, what's interesting is how many of them were really good individual contributors and would be ecstatic if you allowed them to just go back to doing the thing they love.
Right.
Treat them respectfully, pay them for their impact, not for the role they're in. I mean, with all due respect to the people from Hay, the Hay point system has caused some challenges for us.
Right.
In that, people are looking to accumulate employees, customers, budget. I mean, that's the old school. It's the thing that bloated the Sloan BU model, which was how do you job grade?
Right.
Where's the impact there? If you're an incredibly good GC who does an amazing bit on, let's say, IP or on security, why do you want them leading anyone? Just protect us. You know what I mean? If you get somebody who's really good at the transition from legacy to cloud in banking, you know what you need them doing? That.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not trying to do something you've not trained them to do.
And we will be right back.
With employee disengagement at its highest level in 9 years, your company can't afford to miss the mark when it comes to optimizing your hiring, management, and team performance practices. At its lowest level, employee turnover costs you $11,000 per person. And those are dollars you can easily save with the right set of people analytics. Real Good Ventures is a talent optimization consultancy specializing in world-class analytics specific to your people and the critical role they play within your organization. Gain confidence in your hiring practices, keep the boss holes from driving your talent away, design your teams for flawless execution, and create a culture that offers meaning and fulfillment. Real Good Ventures has a family of validated diagnostic tools specific to the human aspect of business, because we know that all business issues are people issues. Visit us today at www.realgoodventures.com and bring meaning and fulfillment back into your workplace.
Okay, let's get back to the program. Bill, when you talk about culture and then connecting back to the idea that, look, if we've made a mistake and we've put somebody in a leadership role, supervisory role, that is not equipped, doesn't even have a desire to develop other people, do it with honor and give them a chance to step back. However, we still have a number of organizations whose culture would look upon that as that's a walk of shame. It's like, wow, man, you couldn't cut it. That goes right to the C-suite, I think, of creating that atmosphere or starting to create that atmosphere. It's like, you know what? That's on us. Yeah. No harm, no foul, man. We are going to give you a chance to step back, go back into that individual contributor role and support you in that. That is a big shift.
Oh, enormous. And if you think about all the social norms that we've allowed to creep over the years, which is we allow grin effing to happen.
Right.
We allow people to play, we have values of respect. It's respectful to mention to somebody else that you think that person is terrible at the job, but not say it to their face.
Right.
It's respectful to make them wondering where they stand. You want to know why anxiety and depression are on a rise, because people don't know what they can count on at work.
Exactly.
That's true.
Yes, that is so true. Yeah.
So if we're talking about what you have written in the book about called the mishandling of managers, for the reasons we've been discussing here, what can a senior leader do? But what's some practical advice? What would be a first step we need to take?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking keeping it basic here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would start by revisiting the roles themselves.
Okay.
It's interesting. Often when you hire somebody, you put them into the role as left by the last person.
Sure.
Not what the role should be. And most people, when they're in a role and they're pretty good at something or they have some excess capacity, you load them up. You play an economy of scope game because the person has capacity to do it. But, if every time you put somebody new in, you said, well, what does the job actually need to be? What are the few activities critical to driving value or reducing risk?
Mm-hmm.
And then starting from there and making sure that you automatically built in enough for time on talent, not doing administrivia, not doing bureaucracy. I think the roles would look really different. And so first one is revisit the role.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can say, okay, if that's the role, then let's work through a checklist. Do they have a good enough team around them? Do they have enough authority and decision rights?
Nice.
Right? Do they have enough budget?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Are it clear where they fit into the operating model? Because what everyone loves is when you start playing Hunger Games for even the smallest amounts of capital and decision and influence.
That's right. That's right.
But as soon as you have that sorted out, all of which is controlled by people above you, I might add, executives.
Yes.
Then you can say, okay, if that's it, then what's the ideal candidate look like? And then and only then do you get to say, what's the knowledge, skills, attributes, and experiences that would be ideal?
Right.
But, somebody who's really good in a place that has a little bit of Hunger Games in their culture may not be great at a place that needs to be completely collegial and cross-functional.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
Right. And there is pick the person fit for the role and the culture and the strategy and the operating model and the people on their team. That's how you dial it in, right? It means, hashtag selection matters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
so that to me is a big one right there, right?
Yeah.
Pick them, go back. But it also requires an acknowledgement that a good portion of your incumbents are not up to it.
Yeah. So can you double click on that for a minute? What are leaders overlooking that they probably already know. Why are they overlooking that news that this section of people aren't really fit for the job?
Well,
Not bad people.
Fear is at the core of all of that, right? I mean, think about how many of the people who listen to you and or you'll probably know in your own life. Why do people stay in lousy relationships?
Because they know it.
Yeah, because they know it, right? And it's, what if, is it going to be better than this? I mean, our willingness to normalize lousy is pretty strong.
It is.
It's true.
Right? It's like, well, hey, they may not be great, but they're mine. Or they could be destroying everything underneath you. Right? And so, the thing I think that most leaders fail to recognize is their inaction speaks just as loudly as their action.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when you see youngsters looking around going, what's the secret to success here? Oh, well, I should be an a-hole. Right. And I right. Exactly. And I should step on people, for my own personal, and I should always look to showcase me. I mean, that sort of stuff is embedded pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so, that's when you're taking a look at the incumbents, it should come in the context of purpose, strategy, and culture to make sure you're being overt in signposting to the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We know we've allowed it get a little sideways here, or we've had 1,000 flowers blooming. Just think the challenge from a leadership scale standpoint. When everybody runs the place the same way, you have a reasonable assurance that you can move a leader from one area to another and it will work.
Mm-hmm.
When you allow it to be cult of personality, you have no idea if it's going to work.
Right.
Every time you move somebody. So there is something about get really clear. Yeah, get really clear on how you want to run the place and pick for that.
Mm-hmm.
So much of that has gone out the window. I mean, as we've really leaned on HR and we've, said, oh, HR, you have to come up with the perfect 9-box, the perfect form, the perfect appraisal. The hiring manager should be allowed just to do unstructured interviews because they'll know it when they see it. Take a break. It's so bad when you see all the bad stuff being used way more than the valid stuff, like inversely correlated.
Yeah. Yeah. Real quick story sidebar. Well, I'll put it in here. I would love to have had you in the room, Bill, for this one, but I had a client say, well, yeah, I know. I mean, Real Good Ventures, you provide objective data. You equip us to help understand, those elements of a person that are highly predictive on the success in their role. But we're kind of just going to go with our impression during the interview. This is an organization that is global, that employs over 10,000 people. And I was stunned. I thought they were joking with me. And I said, really? You're just going to go with sort of a gut emotional, how does it feel during the interview sort of thing when that subjectivity is completely unpredictive and prescriptive? And I was shocked.
Well, and it's amazing how prevalent it is. I mean, I used to laugh in the earliest days of my experience in McKinsey and say, when you get 1 million resumes for 5,000, roles, you can afford to be terrible at selection.
It's true. That's true.
Right. When sourcing is so good and recruiting is so good that everyone in the pool can do the job, you are basically picking on fit. Which then, whether or not the local partners can conceive of you and think you'd be a good mesh matters.
Right.
Most organizations don't have that kind of brand. Mm-mm. So selection does matter. Mm-hmm. And boy, do you get in trouble, because then it's like every hiring manager wants every entry-level job to be treated as a unicorn.
Right.
As opposed to a pool role. But if you treat it like a unicorn, you're doing a deal. You're allowing them to negotiate. The minute you allow negotiation to occur in those pool roles, you are inviting a comp disparity problem. Mm-hmm. You're inviting a disparate treatment problem, right? I mean, so much of this is like, again, the negative annuity that will yield benefits 10 years down the road.
Right.
That's wise.
Can I get back to the word fear really quick? Because a couple of weeks ago, we did an episode on the whole return to office topic. And I'd love to get your perspective on this, because, shortly after we started to come back from the pandemic, and there was an immediate push to really mandate people coming back to the office. Now we're looking at data that is saying a lot of executives are regretting the heavy-handed, bringing the hammer down. You're coming back to the office. And what they're realizing is, they said, what we failed to do? We failed to ask our employees what they thought. Even though there were a lot of surveys put out,
Yeah.
Just generally, we did not ask, and then we're losing tons of people. Yet, again, in the face of all the objective data that is available and the tools we have, we had a lot of organizations just revert back to that old way because I think it was fear that we've lost control of the traditional way of doing business. What's your take on that? What advice can you give the middle to consider the new world of work after the pandemic?
Oh, it's a great question. Look, I'd say in the first instance, for the people who are currently in charge,
mm-hmm.
they are likely in their last or their second to last role of being in charge.
Okay.
So the stereotypical old white dude, who is holding on with desperate grip, saying, "This is mine. I'm going to hold on to it." Right. Now, if we were really empathy oriented, we'd see that for a good number of those folks, their identity is mm-hmm. likely tied up at work.
True.
A good portion of their identity is their importance, and part of that importance is their crew. Mm. And they were probably used to coming out of their office and seeing a sea of cubes or other offices or whatever filled with their people.
Their people, yep.
And they were getting their work done, and they could walk around and poke in and check in and see how things are going. All of their management by walking around principles are useless.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even if they come into the office, there's no one there. So, well, how do they know that their stuff is being done?
Right.
And will they be exposed? And will they hit their numbers? And so, yeah, there is a lot of fear there because you fear what you don't see.
Right.
You can't be sure of, right? So, I mean, I have a certain amount of empathy for that. I do. It doesn't mean we should continue doing things like that. But, as my daughter and my stepdaughter and my partner like to say to me, all emotions end in anger. It's like
interesting.
fear, anxiety, disappointment, rejection. They all end up, you're either elated or you're angry.
Right.
And I do think there's a little bit of that, right? But that's for the execs. But this fear thing that you're describing, mm-hmm. I think more broadly, let's say both sides, in air quotes, the employee force and the company force, we've allowed this to become, a fixed sum 1 and 0 sort of equation. And I think that's a mistake.
Okay.
I mean, this idea that, it's not a light switch, it's a dimmer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And, the mandate was a stupid idea. I mean, there's no need to sugarcoat that. It's a really dumb idea. When you're one of the biggest brands on the planet, let's say in professional services or banking,
okay,
and you put out a decree that everyone shall be back, and collectively your workforce gives you the double middle fingers,
right?
Where do you go from there? It's like mom and dad figuring out that you can't actually force your kids to eat the food on their plate. And when the kids figure that out, you're screwed.
You are.
Right.
You planted that flag and you got to stick with it, but you are screwed. You're right. You're right.
Yeah, you're right. You're riding that like the Hindenburg, right? I mean, it's going down badly.
Yeah.
I think the challenge was, and I was begging people not to send memos.
Oh.
Please don't send that memo. Please do not send that memo. At minimum, just say to them, hey, we're trying to figure it out. We're all still worried about being safe. Many of us have parents at home or whatever and kids. We're figuring it out. Just let's take a breath. If we can keep this thing running, we'll figure it out in a way that works for all of us as buy some time. The thing that has surprised me is that there's been a relatively small group that's gotten the idea that you should match the level of coordination required to the level of collaboration required by the work. So, when you're kicking off a project, we're going to be in for 7 days straight. We're going to get it right. But once you're up in your work streams and running, then it starts looking a little bit more like regular project management or performance management.
Sure.
So if you said to a worker, being part of us means this: 1 day a month is for the company.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get together, have a nice meal, maybe some drinks, celebrate what's going on, and clue you in on what's happening with the company.
Yeah.
2 days a month are going to be for the unit you work in. Same sort of stuff, but probably with a little bit more tactical planning, so everybody knows what everybody else is doing. And then the rest of the time, it's up to you and your direct supervisor to figure out when the level of collaboration means we actually have to be in each other's presence.
Right.
Right. With one big exception. When you join, onboarding must be in person and probably needs to be for at least 6 months. The thing is, we all deluded ourselves in the earliest days of COVID because we were rolling over social capital built up over years.
Right.
People who knew the language, knew the shortcuts, knew who to call, what the hell is going on here, who do I go, right?
Yeah.
If you go into a place and the only thing you know is written down, the stuff written down is not that.
That's true.
How
That's
would
true.
you know,
Right.
right? I mean, I'm like, we're now going into year 3 of this. I worry that we're backing our way into the gig economy without even thinking about it. Because when everyone is more focused about me and what works for me and not we, you have a dressed up vendor, right? And it's on the company. It's on the company to make it more attractive to want to be part of we. I just worry that this stuff, with the mandates and the stops and the starts and whatever, we've made, and it's amazing about this. We've made it so transactional that we've lost sight of the social part that's so important for people to feel like they belong to something that matters.
Right.
I mean, think about driving, where I live in the Lehigh Valley here. It's like this logistics hub. We have the airport and, the highways all coming together in Northeast. We would have on billboards what the hourly starting wage was. And then they started going to daily pay.
So
if you're going to pay people daily and leading with just $1, you might as well drive around with a flatbed and pick people up to go out and work in the field that day.
Right. That's true. That is true.
I mean, talk about companies who were thinking they were being competitive and responding to the market. No, the market wants you to be in the ballpark, but they don't want you to treat. I mean, it's like when you start getting to the point where I pay you, therefore I can treat you like you're not human.
Right. As a transaction.
It's when it's so transactional, it erodes the underlying essence that gives companies the resilience they want through the human capital. When people line up and go, hey, we're not going to let this thing go down. We're going to line up and we're going to do what's necessary. That's because they care. Mm-hmm. If you create this environment where they don't care because it's all about, well, what are you paying me? You get what you have now, which is, well, I don't have to come in. You can't force me. And that's where I think that's why I think it's in a weird, circuitous way. The only person to broker initially detente and then to actually people giving a crap is the person they work for.
Yeah.
And they either have the skills to do that or they don't. You know what I mean? And I worry for many of them, 20 years have been about the task, not about the person.
What a great part 1 of our interview with Bill Schaninger. Make sure to tune in next week when we will hear even more from Bill about his experience in the world of consulting, but also his experience as a leader and a business professional. Make sure to check out the show notes and all of the links in there. We will see you next week on the Bosshole Chronicles.